operations in Greenland. Denmark's public broadcaster reports at least 3 Americans with ties to Donald Trump are conducting influence campaigns in Greenland. That's sparking concerns they could be working to shift public opinion against Denmark. The US president has publicly expressed his ambition to acquire the island. Greenland is a self-governing territory of Denmark. What we don't know is, were these American spies operating in Greenland? Joining me now is Jim Townsend, Adjunct Senior Fellow of the Transatlantic Security Programme. Thank you for joining us. I mean, I'll ask you about what you have read about this story in a moment, but I guess we can assume if this was a covert operation, the US wouldn't confirm it anyway, so we may never get an answer.
Well, I think that's probably right. It seemed to me so sloppy. I've worked with the intel community for years as part of my job in the Pentagon, and this doesn't sound like something, one of their operations. And also, like you point out, we're not going to hear if it is or not. And usually these things are done behind the scenes. If something like this happens, it's done intel agency to intel agency. It doesn't become public. So this just seems a little bit different.
It could be perhaps communication agencies perhaps that have got links with the administration who have gone in, perhaps going a bit rogue, trying to turn the conversation within Greenland. I mean, that sort of thing does happen, doesn't it? It happens in political campaigns domestically.
Well, that's right. And in fact, it almost sounds like that, something rogue, maybe some supporters of Donald Trump. I mean, the way it was described is that they have ties to Donald Trump instead of ties to the U.S. government or members of the U.S. government. But it made it sound like it's not in a U.S. government thing, but something else. And we're just going to have to hear what else the Danes know and what else the U.S. might say.
But why wouldn't someone in the intel community deny it or confirm it? Why haven't we heard anything at all?
Well, that's usually the way they are, is they're not going to necessarily say anything. They're going to leave it to the White House to say something or not. And then it'll just go quiet because, like I said, usually, particularly between allies, it's done intel agency to intel agency, and it's totally quiet. It doesn't go public. So that's what makes me think this is something you mentioned, using the word rogue. I think that's the right description of this so far, but we're just going to have to wait.
Pretty insulting, though, to the Danish, isn't it, when they are such close allies?
It is. It's shameful. I'm hoping that this is some rogue group that will be, swept off the table at some point. But if in fact this is an official thing that the U.S. government had sanctioned and was doing or something along those lines, it would be just shameful to go about this kind of operation with an ally, particularly an ally like Denmark. We're very close to Denmark. Our militaries work together all the time. I worked with Denmark for many years, and Denmark was always with us in tough times, always sending forces, always sending their F-16s. And for us to do something like this is it's insulting to them and insulting to us, too.
Where do you think they'll take it from here? Because actually, for Denmark, their language, their public statements around all of this have been very strong, haven't they? And they are coming up against, a key ally for them, and it is going to perhaps do some damage to them by being so outspoken against the Trump White House right now. But they clearly feel very strongly about this. Have you seen them as outspoken about this in terms of diplomatic language, at least?
No, not really, because we haven't been in this kind of situation before in terms of our bilateral relations. They were very strong on this, and they seem very sure of what they have found out. And I guess they are holding these 3 people that they have. But you're absolutely right. This is very strong. And I think in keeping with the temper of the times in Denmark and Copenhagen, where they've been upset now for a few months about what's been coming out of the White House. So saying something soft and nice and diplomatic, I don't think there's any room for that politically in Copenhagen. I think they're really upset. And I think the tone of voice coming out of Copenhagen reflected that. And so next steps, the charge who was there is going to go back to Washington with a cable and say, this is what I was told. And then it's going to be over to the White House to say something.
OK. Jim Townsend, we weren't working with much there. Thank you very much for giving us what you could on it, though. But I guess it comes with the territory. But it is fascinating. Thanks for joining us.